Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? So we're nearly done. Hope it was a great morning. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. And I have about 20 minutes to talk to you about Open Innovation 2.0. And I want to make one small point about being open to innovation. So I have a lot of slides, so we'll do a drive-by shooting, and afterwards I'll be around. If anybody wants to talk to me, I'll certainly be around. So I want to use a quote from our CEO. It's always safe to use a quote from your CEO, but our CEO made, I think, a very important statement in Washington a couple of years ago. He said that, Paul Otterlini, the future for every nation or the future for every city will be shaped by new ideas and creativity. These are the engines of future prosperity. I don't think anybody would argue with that. We're going to talk about open innovation, but before we talk about what is open innovation, I know Brian gave you a definition. I'm sure John talked about it, and John Shaw is actually a fantastic example actually of a practitioner, has a full-time job, but is heavily involved in actually with different networks, and a brilliant example of Open Innovation 2.0. Our definition of innovation is quite simple. It's ideas, by execution, by adoption. There's a gentleman in MIT who has a great saying. He says, innovation is not innovators innovating, it's customers adopting. So if something is called innovation, the first thing you have to do is look at, is there a customer who's adopting it? Maybe just to mention, I think what's happening here in Dublin is a really good example actually of innovation. There are lots of ideas, there's execution, and there is adoption going on, and great credit to Peter and the team, and Deirdre and Mary. Just what we have here is a platform for emergence, and if you look how far Innovation Dublin has happened, I can't think of another city in Europe, in fact worldwide, where there's such an awareness of the possibilities for innovation and a culture that's emerging to support innovation. So, the Innovation Dublin event, October 15 to 26, it actually is quite a unique event. We're working in many cities worldwide. We haven't come across a comparable initiative. Intel as a company is very, thinking forward-looking, but many other companies are thinking the same. And there is this propensity from large companies to participate in open innovation activities. And our vision statement, it's a couple of years old. We talk about this decade we'll create and extend computing technology, which you might expect, but it's all about connecting and enriching the lives of everybody on the planet. Michael Porter, who wrote a lot around core competencies and Porter's 5 Forces model, he's talked more and more about shared value organizations. And shared value organizations are organizations that are not just about profit, but they're about actually solving society's problems, seizing new opportunities. So more and more companies are much more open to actually participating in open innovation. And I like Brian's talk from Trinity, and I think we're seeing universities even change. In the past, universities were responsible for education, information diffusion. In the last 10, 15 years, Irish universities have got better at research, and SFI have invested in that. But the new mantra for the 21st century is value creation from universities. Now, I won't speak for all of the academics, but many of the academics will resist that. But I think Brian is an example of academic researcher that has embraced that. There's a big responsibility for the universities to actually create value, not just commercial value, but societal value. The organization that I'm responsible for leading at Intel is called Intel Labs Europe. We're about advancing Intel, but we're also about advancing the broader European project, and we've very much aligned our research outputs with Europe 2020. We've had the opportunity to work closely with the European Commission on the formation of Digital Agenda and Innovation Union. You might be aware of these two flagship initiatives. And our outputs are very much aligned with advancing those two initiatives and the broader Europe 2020, which is about sustained or sustainable and inclusive growth. I think we'll recognize that innovation is very much moving out of the lab. In the past, there was a brilliant scientist in a Bell lab or an IBM lab or an Intel lab that came up with the innovation. Open innovation to a certain extent is actually almost, what happened last decade, and now we're into really ecosystem innovation or network innovation. If we had more time, we could talk about the provenance of this, but you only have to look at what's happening in phones, where you have the iPhone competing with Android, competing with Microsoft and Nokia, to see actually the innovation ecosystem that has the biggest critical mass and the highest innovation velocity has the most momentum. And with respect to Intel Labs Europe, we've grown very much over the last couple of years, largely through open innovation. In fact, we've doubled in size, and we're in 11 or 12 different countries. But today we're 40 labs. Some of them are working on blue sky work. Others are actually working on direct development and shipping products to other companies. We've more than 4,000 R&D professionals. But probably the strength of what we work at is that we have a research ecosystem of more than 400 different organizations. They could be large multinationals like an Ericsson's or Philips or SAP, could be a leading university. But there's also quite a few high-performance startups, and then there are influential policymakers. So it's very much, the game has very much moved to actually the ecosystem. I have the privilege at the moment of chairing an EU group called Open Innovation Strategy Policy Group, and what this group it's formed or created by DG Information Society, but it's mostly made up of leading industrial companies and some academics. And what we're trying to do is drive the recognition of open innovation as a new paradigm in Europe, and to help change thinking, policies. Even some of the instruments in Horizon 2020 are being adapted to really embrace open innovation more and more. And arguably FP7 and Horizon 2020 is the largest open innovation fund in the world. We just published our new outlook for 2012 just this week. It's available at open-innovation.eu, and actually there's 2 or 3 years of these yearbooks available, and lots of best practices examples from across Europe if you're interested. At Intel, we're seeing 3 mega trends. We're seeing digital transformations, which is driven by Intel and many companies in our ecosystem. We see sustainability as a new paradigm, financial sustainability, but more and more environmental sustainability, and the idea that we can meet all of our the growth demands of our current society while not compromising the prospects of future societies and so on. And then finally, mass collaboration, and I'll come to that. But at the core of this is open innovation. We see these 3 things that are really fueling the open innovation fire. And Dublinked is a fantastic example of this, and one of the applications that's available there in the App Store that I really like is Fix Your Street. This is enabled, coming back to 3 trends, it's enabled by the digital transformation. It's about sustainability and making the city's roads and so on better, and it's fueled by mass collaboration. I think it's a simple example of how these trends come together. Moore's Law is driving a lot of what we see going on, and very simply, Moore's Law is about doubling transistor density every 18 months and delivering that at less or equal cost. Now, the business consequence and societal consequence of that is that the cost of information is falling year on year, and there are more and more opportunities to substitute information for other resources in society. And we see Moore's Law colliding with virtually every domain. In fact, I can't think of a single domain that isn't being disrupted or changed for the positive by Moore's Law. Just to talk about mass collaboration, the European Internet Foundation, collection of forward-looking MEPs, produced a very nice report, A Digital World in 2025. They saw lots of trends, but the one thing that they called out, the central paradigm we propose is that of a world driven by mass collaboration. I think that's really true. As we look forward, we're going to have lots more person-to-person collaboration. We're going to see lots more person-to-machine collaboration and way more machine-to-machine collaboration. If you look forward, even in 3 to 4 years, Intel, we're predicting about 15 billion connected devices on the internet. Basically, if something has computing power, it actually will connect and it will communicate. And we're really into the era, we've gone through from the PC into the internet and into the era of social computing where we're leveraging collective intelligence. So Henry Chesbrough obviously coined the phrase open innovation, did a really nice job sort of describing that. Obviously didn't invent it, had been going on for quite a while, but we can think about this really as open innovation 1.0, and essentially not all of the smart people in the world will work for your organization or your university, and the idea that innovations or ideas can move in and out of organizations. But complemented with that is the idea of triple helix innovation. Henry Ectovitz has been writing about this for more than a decade. And the idea that there's an opportunity and indeed responsibility for universities industry and government to work together to drive structural changes beyond the scope of what any one organization could do on their own. So this leads us to Open Innovation 2.0, which is where we get ecosystem-wide innovation. I know Brian mentioned users. I'll come back to that in a second. But we have increasing infrastructure. We're seeing lots of spillover effects from innovations in companies and universities that go into the broader society, and the pace of innovation accelerates dramatically. And Ray Kurzweil has talked a lot about this in the last decade. Some of you might be familiar with his work on the singularity or the law of accelerating returns, and he's predicting, and probably rightfully so, that we'll see more innovation in the next 10 years than we've seen in the last couple of hundred. And just as we look around, I'm certainly surprised at the ever-increasing pace of innovation and the ever-increasing level of interconnectivity between us all. In industrial organizations, and to give an example from Intel Labs Europe and Intel Labs, we're more and more practicing this idea of quadruple helix innovation, where it's not just working with other industry players, not just working with academics, not just working with the government or cities, as we do with Peter Finnegan and his team here, but more and more working with the end users. And with users both at the creation standpoint, where they're involved in the creation process, but also actually in the composition of services in real time. I'll give you an example of that with Dublin City very shortly. The user, of course, is becoming much more important, and there's a very nice report in the Open Innovation 2.0 Outlook that I mentioned. We, as an OISPG, we completed a project last year about the socio-economic impacts of open innovation that was led by Logic and the Innovation and Value Institute, and Intel and Nokia and IBM participated in that. But in that report, it talks about actually the inverting of the open innovation pyramid, where innovation is really shifting from the technologists and the service providers to the user. And Jean-Claude Burgelman, who's with the EU, he was already writing about this, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. The shift from consumers, the user as a consumer, to a contributor. And now actually we're talking about the user as a prosumer, or really as an innovator. We have a collab with Nokia in northern Finland. It's with the city of Oulu, but is also involving many of the citizens of Oulu. There's 200,000 citizens there, and they've all bought in. Not obviously every individual one, but the reason we put this lab into northern Finland, it wasn't an obvious choice, was the ability to work very closely with the city and with city dwellers around future services that might be available on mobile phones, particularly around 3D services. Just to give you a couple of examples of Open Innovation 2.0 in practice, Deirdre mentioned the Innovation Value Institute. Actually, John and Mainstream Renewable Technologies are very strong contributors to that. That was established more than 6 years ago. The half-life of a consortium like this is typically about 6 months. There's lots of interest, and then it dies off because there's lots of hard work that needs to happen. But today there are more than 80 organizations, governments, industry, academics working together to create a new standard for how companies and governments can create value from technology. I'm really pleased that more than 300 companies and governments worldwide have actually adopted the output of the research organization, and it's an example of an institute that connects research with education and indeed practice. So more than 500 executives have taken professional diplomas of various classes that are coming out of the Innovation Value Institute. And we just had our summer summit last week, and we had some tremendous speakers, CIO from BP, from Logica, several great speakers from the European Commission. But to bring open innovation actually very close to home here, I would have to say we have an outstanding partnership with Dublin City and with Trinity College, and indeed with NUI Maynooth, around thinking about smart and sustainable cities. And this is a partnership collaboration that is gathering momentum, it's gathering steam. It's like many innovations, it starts through relatively simple interactions, and all of a sudden complex systems, new options, innovation options start to emerge. And One of the exciting things that's happening is a solution called City Watch, which is thinking about the real-time needs of cities, leveraging real-time information and real opportunities to work together better. This is in part supported by SFI, and it's Dublin City working with Intel and the Distributed Systems Group at Trinity College. As we think about future cities research, we're thinking about sensing, we're thinking about communications, and then applying intelligence, and this delivers us improved services. Now, these services could be as simple as just some autonomic resource optimization, so we're making real-time resource optimization decisions, or it could be totally new services to citizens or businesses, and some really, really exciting opportunities happening there. If we go back to the mass collaboration idea, we're thinking about large-scale urban sensing, and I mentioned the idea that in the future we may have as much as 15 billion connected devices on the Internet of Things within, by 2015 or 2016. In fixed sensing, we'll have sensors at a fixed place in the environment. They could be weather sensors, they could be CCTV, for example. In San Francisco, a number of years ago, Intel, our lab in Berkeley, instrumented the rubbish collection trucks with pollution sensors, and all of a sudden the city of San Francisco started to get a picture of where were the hotspots for pollution in the city. And more, we're going to see participatory sensing where individuals will actually start to report data, stuff that they see. They may take pictures, or there actually may be sensors on their particular devices. One of the most exciting initiatives that Intel is driving is the launch of a product called Ultrabook. You might have seen the Ultrabooks. They're very thin and light. They're about 0.8 of an inch thick. But later this year, we'll be shipping a number of the Ultrabooks actually with embedded sensors that will report in real time lots of different conditions. We're currently trialing out of our energy and sustainability lab an application called POEM, Personal Office Energy Manager, where we've equipped Ultrabooks and notebooks with various sensors in an office environment, and we're able to create a new ad hoc pseudo SCADA system, supervisory control and data acquisition, where office workers can actually feed the information about the ambient conditions in the building, be it temperature or humidity, and that drives a more comfortable environment for them, but also allows better energy optimization in the building. And what we'll try and do in the City Watch application is combine data from different sources to extract high-level information. And I'm quite pushed for time here, but here's just one particular scenario, and I think this is very real. Joe is an accountant. He's walking to the bus stop after work, and heavy rain has added to the usual congestion. So he's approaching the bus stop, and City Watch application informs Joe of an issue. Stop number 55 is closed due to substantial flooding on Baker Street. City Watch proposes, well, there's another route you can take, et cetera, et cetera. We'll step through this. Joe might actually provide some feedback on this, and more we see user rating of services, like on TripAdvisor is hugely influential. And then Anne is somebody who's working in the city, and she's actually responding and seeing what's happening in real time. She's getting data from a number of different city dwellers, and she can quickly aggregate both automated data and the data that's coming in real time to actually drive some decisions that drive better interventions than could happen today. And she's responding and so on. Let me just stop there. I wanted to sort of finish by giving another example of open innovation, which is a collaboration between Intel and the UK government and Imperial College London and University College London. And this is an institute for sustainable and connected cities that will work very closely with Dublin City and Trinity College. And what we're trying to do here is to jointly create, using open innovation, here's a list of types of research outputs, and of course, the academics will publish papers, but again, that paradigm that academics are measured on, people will think I'm on a rant here, just on publications is so 19th or 20th century. we need to have a much broader spectrum of outputs from our research institute. So what we're thinking about in London is novel user experiences, understanding what are the future workloads of the city. So one of the big challenges for London, anybody that's flown into London in the last few weeks or months will see actually the city is already seriously stressed, and what's going to happen actually when, maybe more than 100,000 people or more converge on London for the Olympics. And wouldn't it be nice if we could simulate this in advance and figure out what are the interventions we need to make and change the business logic. Of course, we need to talk about the future network architectures and protocols. Security and privacy are really important. What are the new opportunities in big data? Some advances like in-memory databases are changing the way we can actually optimize in real time. So, for example, we have a collaboration with SAP where in the past an optimization, a batch job that would take about 17 hours can now complete in 3 minutes. So banks, for example, are using these applications, these kind of applications to decide, well, what should their cash positions be, overnight. They can now run these sophisticated analysis in 3 minutes. But as we continue to improve the technology, we can get these kind of optimizations to complete in a matter of seconds. And if you have dependable cloud computing, you can start to optimize in real time in the city. So you're about to take a journey, you can actually schedule or put that journey actually into an optimization system, and it will actually in real time give you the best route, and actually will optimize, in real time optimize traffic throughout the city. There was a discussion today earlier on around sort of business models, and Alexander Osterwalder's work around business model innovation, business model canvases, of course, groundbreaking. We've had the opportunity in the last number of years to work with a company called Dublin. Larry Keeley is the founder, and they have some groundbreaking work showing actually that business model innovation is probably the area of greatest return for innovation. And another piece of related research, Dublin showed that most of the innovation efforts over the last decade or so have gone into improving product performance, faster, cheaper, better. That's what Intel does. We try and make our processors faster, cheaper, better. That's what BMW does with their engines and so on. But this is the area of actually lowest return based on the Dublin research. So that doesn't mean that you stop investing in product innovation, because if you don't have a product, you're not in business. But the big returns are coming from business model innovation. Apple is a really good example of that. Amazon is a really good example of that. So business model innovation is going to be particularly important for cities in terms of the adoption of new technology. So we've just launched the new institute in London. And just to mention, we did this launch 2 weeks ago at Downing Street. The Chancellor George Osborne, over a series of meetings, actually was directly brokering the relationship between Intel and, in the past, I think this is noteworthy, University College London, Imperial College London, 2 of the top 10 universities in the world in past, hugely competitive, not very collaborative, but I have to say, the chemistry between the two, it was like working with a single organization. I think this is more and more the future, and in Ireland, we have to have our 7 universities working together really as one university rather than as competitors, because we're too small. So we're very excited about what's happening in London. We're very excited what's happening in Dublin. And we're working very closely with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, ICT Labs, which is one of the KICs. And we had Professor Willem Jonker here a week ago. He's made several visits in the last month or so, and we hope later in the year to be able to announce a new ICT Labs hub in London with Dublin as a satellite, specifically to work on digital cities and future cities. 1 or 2 last examples. More than 20 years ago, I had the opportunity, I was working with Philips Labs in Eindhoven, and the NAT Lab was one of the most famous labs in the world. It was very much a closed innovation environment, high security, huge sort of patent output. But Philips made the decision to open this up as an open innovation campus. And they've moved the whole area. If you think about the Dutch national innovation strategy, they talk about their airport, they talk about the seaport in Rotterdam, and they talk about Eindhoven as the brain port. And now there are more than 8,000 international people and more than 100 companies in this campus. And of course, Philips is still thriving in the campus. British Telecom are doing something very similar. Industrial Park in the UK is a few years behind this, but again, BT opened up this very closed park in Martlesham, and it's now well on its way to be emulating what's happened in Eindhoven. A few last ideas. Value innovation originated in India, and something that's hugely topical and popular, and it's and rightfully so. The idea that as we innovate, we drive down the costs and we actually increase the value. And I think collectively as a society and this is our business environment, people got lazy. And I think the new pressures that we see actually are dramatically increasing the importance and the relevance of value innovation. The last point I'd like to make is, okay, innovating is not enough. We've identified through our work at least 6 vectors that are important to the adoption of innovations to create benefit. So there has to be a vision, and very clearly there is a vision in Dublin. John Tierney and Peter Finnegan have a vision of Dublin really as a hotbed for innovation. There has to be prototypes and technologies, of course. There has to be business cases. But then we get into the soft stuff: business process change, organizational change, and indeed, customer and societal change. So are the customers, is society willing and able to adopt the solutions that are being provided? And very often as technologists we can forget about that, but at the end of the day it comes down to adoption. So it's been a great pleasure to talk with you today, just to congratulate Peter and Deirdre and Mary and everybody involved with the innovation efforts in Dublin and Dublinked. Dublin is certainly in a very healthy position with respect to encouraging innovation and creating a climate of innovation that really will, I think, foster and allow innovation to grow. So thanks for your attention.
This is the final piece, but I would like to throw it open to the floor, see if anybody has questions for Professor Curley. We're just running 10 minutes late, so just is there anybody who would? Sorry.
I'm just wondering what sort of agreements Intel will have in place for open innovation. What sort of privacy agreements or what sort of
Yeah, we have to put a lot of work into it. You don't do everything. We have, in our network across Europe, many of the labs are involved in open innovation activity, but some of them have actually, it's closed, and when we're working on our future products, for example. But a really good source, this area is actually, it's very topical. The Open Innovation Strategy Policy Group, there's a report we published about 2 years ago which talks about the legal implications and IP implications of open innovation. That report was published by Jacqueline Vallat, and I think that's a really good source if you're interested in that area. It's available from openinnovation.eu, and we've worked very hard, and we continuously iterate and refine our open innovation agreements and IP agreements to make sure that we're protected, that our co-innovators are protected, and most of all, that we actually are able to create value together. Be happy to talk to you afterwards if you like more information.